Can I ask about this notion of provisional truth that we heard about
yesterday?
Well,
I want to distinguish, to be really not pedantic, but very, very specific. There's two things that are related but not absolutely identical. There's the two categories of truth, ultimate and conventional truth, and that is about how we experience the world. And then in terms of the Buddha's teachings, we discriminate between statements which are direct and which are descriptions of things that do not need qualification, that are statements of that's how it is, and other statements, provisional statements, which are statements which are effective for a certain person or a certain audience, but eventually that framework in which they were couched will have to be discarded because it's not actually in accord with ultimate truth. So they're related, but they're slightly, one is about reality, and the other is about in a way the teachings, the scriptures, and how they must be interpreted. But as for the distinction between ultimate and conventional truth, yes, it's like this, that there are two ways of seeing the world. One way is when we do not examine the nature of what we perceive. We simply take it for granted that what we perceive is real, that the contents of our perception, the appearances, are truly existent. That's conventional truth. Now, within conventional truth, there's also a distinction between conventional truth which is valid up to a point, and conventional truth which is completely fictional. So that, for instance, if we take a car, for instance, the example of a car, it would have been a chariot, of course, in ancient India. We take a car. If we imagine there is some irreducible essence called car, and we think this appearance is merely a manifestation of this essence, car, when we examine the car, the appearance, we don't find such an essence. We find merely there's an assembly of parts in a particular configuration. However, when we sit in that configuration of parts, even though there's no real essence to it called car, it can work, it will convey us from one place to another. So this is a conventional truth, but it's valid in the sense that it works. So one way of distinguishing a valid conventional truth from a completely fictional one is whether it works or not. So it's a conventional truth that this assembly of metal parts and electronics and blah blah blah, many things I don't even know about, is a car. It's not a valid conventional truth that it's a banana, because I cannot eat it. But so if I think of it as a banana, that's a total mistaken idea. Think of it as a car is valid as far as it goes, so it's a conventional truth. The ultimate truth is there is no essence to it, no abiding carness. The car is a dependent phenomena, manifesting through the assembly of parts. So that is, roughly speaking, how we distinguish a conventional from an ultimate truth. You can see that, of course, for Buddhism, there are no thing, or for Madhyamaka, at least the most subtle of philosophical schools, there are no phenomena with any abiding nature, with any intrinsic nature, because everything is dependent, and that is how we understand ultimate truth.
Is therefore everything in the Dharma a conventional truth except emptiness?
Yes. So the Dharma itself is a conventional truth, but it's a conventional truth that points towards emptiness, rather like that analogy of a finger pointing to the moon. It's not the moon, but it's pointing. If we follow the direction, we will, as it were, step in the right way towards the moon. So everything in the Dharma is but you see then Dharma statements, still we can distinguish between provisional Dharma statements and definitive ones. So a definitive Dharma statement is one that, even though it's couched, of course, in concepts, and therefore is in itself a conventional truth, is pointing you beyond the concepts towards that which is non-conceptual emptiness. Whereas a provisional statement would be something like this, where Buddha said, when he said to his disciples at the end of his life, when they're moaning about what they're going to do in the future without him, he said, you should strive on by yourselves. Now, he used the word self, and of course, actually, we do not believe that there is any intrinsically existent self. Buddha wasn't committing himself, wasn't suggesting there was, but it was just in that framework he had to say, stop relying on me, you don't need me, get on with it. So it's just, that's a provisional statement. The self there is quite clearly just, he's working within their framework to give them some assistance. It's not a definitive statement. Buddha didn't suddenly, after 45 years of saying there's no true self, suddenly smuggle it in the last half hour of his life. And I mean, there's plenty of there's many other examples where Buddha uses concepts and idioms that are meaningful to that audience, but we're not to take them as being statements of real fact.